In this video, I will discuss about exception handling in Java. So what is an exception? It is a runtime error when the program terminates abnormally. So how to handle the runtime errors such that your programs can continue to run without terminating. So this is one of the subject that we will introduce in this particular video. So regarding the diagram here, so object is a main class, and from object there is a throwable which is a subclass, and we have exception and runtime exceptions. And in the runtime exception we have arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, index out of bound exception, illegal argument exception, and we have a class not found exception, IO exceptions, and error we have a linkage error, and many more type of errors are there. So system errors are thrown by JVM and represented in the error class. The error class describes the internal system error. So what all the system errors are there internally, that will come to know. Such errors really occur if one does, there's a little you can go beyond notifying the user and try to terminate the program gracefully. So many times the errors will not going to terminate your program here, but it is an exception that will terminate your programs. So exception describes the error caused by your program and external circumstances, and these errors can be caught and handled by your program. So you can always catch those exceptions and you can handle those exceptions. So these are the exceptions: arithmetic exception, a null pointer exception, index out of bound exception, illegal argument exceptions. So runtime exception is caused by programming errors such as bad casting, accessing an out of bound arrays, and numeric errors. So these are some of the causes of the runtime exception, such as the bad casting, accessing out of bound arrays, numeric errors. So runtime errors, runtime exception errors and their subclasses are known as unchecked exceptions. Means all other exceptions are called as a checked exception. Means these are nothing but cannot be traced during the compilation time. So they can be only found at the time of the runtime. So meaning that the compiler forces the programmer to check and deal with the exception. So here the compiler will find out the error if it is a checked exception. And unchecked exception maybe these are null point exception or index out of bound exception. Throws if you access an array out of bound of the arrays, and these are the logical errors that should be corrected in the programs. Unchecked exception can occur anywhere in the program. So to avoid this cumbersome, we try to make use of try catch block. So those statements we try to put it in try and we try to handle it in the catch here. So Java does not mandate you to write the code to catch the unchecked exception. So there is no need of does not mandate you to write the code to catch the answer. So you can leave it. JVM will going to handle the exception here. Okay. So these are some of the unchecked exception here. So these are arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, index out of bound exception, illegal argument exception, many more things. So these are the errors: linkage error, virtual machine error, and many more others. So we have declaring, throwing, and catching the exception. So here method 2 is there. That is going to throw the exception here, and throw. You can throw the exception if you want. You can throw the exception, or you can write method 2 that is throwing the exception. Means you can tell that this particular method is throwing the particular exception. Like this also you can do. So coming to the, it might throw. This is known as declaring the exception. So here a public void my method throws the IO exception. It is throwing the IO exception, and here it is throwing IO exception or other exception. So like this, the throws keyword is used to throw the exception. Okay, and we can create the exception and we can throw. You can create your own exception and you can throw that also you can do. So the exception EX is equal to new the exception, throw the EX. So like this we can create your own exception and also you can throw that. So here it is throwing the illegal argument exception, and we are going to handle that illegal argument exception in the else block. So catching the exceptions here. So here we have 3 different catch statements over here, and the statement may throw any type of exception. Either it can be array, index out of bound, or arithmetic exception, or it may be some other type. And at the last, whichever catch statement it is going to match, so that is going to be executed. So P2 is like file does not exist. So throw some exception here, new IO exception, if the file doesn't have any exception here. Here what happens is like we are going to call this particular function here in the P2, P1, P2 is going to throw the exception. So either you can make use of a try catch here, or you can say that P1 is throwing the IO exception. Either you can make use of try catch, or you can say that this is throwing the exception. That is also you can do that. So rethrowing the exception. So try statements, and we have catch the exception, EX, perform the operation before it exits, throw the EX. So here we are going to throw the rethrowing the exception. We are going to rethrow the exception here. We are going to catch this exception, and again we are going to throw that. Okay. So try the statements and catch the exception EX and handling the EX. Finally statements are executed irrespective of whether it is there is exception or not. The finally statements is going to be executed. Trace the program. Suppose no exception in the statement. So there is no any exception here. So only finally will be executed. Suppose there is an exception. Suppose what happens if there is an exception here? What is the type of exception? Exception 1. So first catch block will be executed. The first catch block will be executed. Here, after that, the finally will be executed. In the statement 2 throws the error of the type exception 2. If it is throwing the type of exception 2, the next catch block will be executed, and after that the finally will be executed. And again we are going to throw the exception here. Again, and we are handling the exception, and we are throwing that exception here back. So exception handling separates the error handling code from the normal programming task. But if you try to use the exception, it requires more time and resources, because it requires instantiating a new exception object and rolling back the call stack and propagating the errors to the calling method. So if you using the exception here, it is going to consume more time and resources. So when to throw the exception? Suppose you don't want to handle that, then you can throw the exception. So when to use the exception here? So when should you use the try catch block in the code? You should use it to deal with the unexpected error condition. Do not use it to deal with a simple unexpected situation. For example, the following code. So here there is no any error here, but still we are trying to use the try catch block. So we should use only when we have you have that possibility that the error will happen. Okay, so if there is no any error, then better not to use the try catch. So defining the custom exception. So we can have your own exception classes, that is called as the custom exception. So we can handle those exception also. So I will try to discuss further using the Eclipse. So I am in Eclipse over here. So what I will do is, right now there is no any exception over here. So I will try to create an arithmetic exception. Okay. So int a is equal to 10 and b is equal to 0. So these are the two variables I am created. So again I am having one more variable a divided by b. So there is an exception over here. Suppose say if I don't handle the exception, what will happen? Say I will say this is by. Run this. So there is a lang.arithmetic exception. So there is an exception that is happening here. So arithmetic exception divide by 0 error is going to be happened. So what I am going to do is I will make use of a try catch block here. So I will say try. So the by is not going to be executed here. So here whatever statement is causing the exception, I am going to put it in the try here, and here it is exception E. I will say system.out.println. So I am going to say exception message. I am going to display the exception message, and along with that I will say caught. Okay. I will say caught the exception. I will try to run this. So the exception is caught now. There is no any abnormal termination of the program. Earlier there was a abnormal termination. Now there is no abnormal termination. We are able to handle the errors very gracefully. We are able to handle the errors. So what I should do is, like, if I try to again throw the exception, or if I say more specific, I want to make it more specific. So here I should say arithmetic exception. So now here the error is going to happen here, and the error is thrown, and arithmetic exception is going to handle the errors here. So instead of very generic, we can make use of arithmetic exception where you can handle the errors. And we'll try to go for further type of exception. Suppose I have the array here and one more array we are having. So new int. Suppose say there are only two blocks of arrays are there, and if I try to access the third block, okay, or fourth block, so now the errors will happen. So right now I cannot handle this error because the control is going out of this. I will just try to comment out this. Now different type of exception is handled. Now this catch block, it is no longer able to handle this because it only handles the arithmetic exception. So the remaining type of exception can be handled by using the catch exception E. So here I can say system.out.println. So I can say it is caught. Okay. So here I'm trying to assign A of 4. Now this different type of error is going to happen. Array index out of bound exception. Now I'm able to handle this here over here. So in the caught statement. So right now it is, I'm not able to handle this unresolved compilation variable. So here there is already A is existing. So I say A1. Okay. Say A1 over here. So this is a caught and by is going to be executed. So this is how I can handle the other type of exceptions also. So to be more specific, I can say this is nothing but array index out of bound exception. Array index out of bound exception. To be more specific, I can say something like this. Okay. So here I can say system dot out dot println exception E. So let me run this. Now it is like more generic type of exception that we can say. So these are the different type of exceptions. Suppose if I want to throw the exception, and now in this particular case there is no exception here, and the by is executed. Suppose say if I want to throw the new exception, I can make use of throw new exception. I can say okay. So this is going to throw the exception. So this is going to throw the exception here, throw new exception. So a new exception will be thrown and that will be handled by the last catch block. Okay. And you can throw the arithmetic exception, or you can throw the array index out of bound exception, or you can throw string index out of bound exception. Like this, you can go on throwing different type of exceptions if you want. So these are the different type of exception that we are seeing. Okay. And if you want to throw the exception here, if you want to say, if you want to throw your own exception, I can say throws. No need of having try and catch blocks. Okay. So I can have one method. I will try to show you that method here. I will, if you want her to have one method here and show. Okay. And here I have two variables. Int A is equal to 10. And b is equal to 0. So int c. So c is equal to a divided by b. So here the error is going to happen. Okay. So because what happens is the b is 0 here. Because of that, the exception is going to happen. Okay. So what I am going to do is I will write throws here, throws exception. Okay. So this can be better. It is throwing the exception here, and I will handle it over here. Okay. So I will handle it over here, and I will say my class, create an object, my class m is equal to new my class. So m dot show. So now what happens is like the show method is going to be called, and we are going to handle it over here. in case of the calling method. So this is a calling method and this is the method that is called. So here I am not handling this error here. Here I am not handling the error. So directly I am throwing this, the calling method is going to handle this. So this is the calling method and here it is handling the exception here. So in this way I can do this, I can handle the arithmetic and other exceptions. And finally we have one more thing. So that is called a finally block and I can say finally. So whether the exception has happened or not, the finally block will be executed. So I say inside finally. So whenever the exception, now case is exception is happening, okay, the finally is going to be executed. Suppose that there is no any exception. Suppose if I remove this statement, no exceptions, but still I am able to handle, I am able to call finally. So finally is called irrespective of whether exception happens or not. So if there is no exception also it is executed. If there is exception also it is executed. So this is what the exception handling is all together. In coming videos I will try to discuss about multi-threadings.